All right, it's a tough subject. We are back, Jessica, and guess what?
What?
We have a guest.
Yay!
Yeah, we
Awesome.
love it when we have company. We love
Nobody,
it when
they don't want to hear our voices all the time.
This is an interesting guest because I think it's the only guest we could ever have on the podcast where I went and got a tattoo with them.
You have a tattoo.
I do.
I'm odd man out here, but I'm thinking.
Right.
I'm thinking about getting it.
It's a huge fail because I went and got the tattoo when I was in Reno, and I'll get to our guest, but it's on my wrist. It's the semicolon.
Yeah,
it's there,
yeah.
but my watch covers it. And we were there, and when I went to go have lunch with our guest, and I'm going to get to her, I walked by a tattoo parlor, and I sat down at lunch. I said, "Hey, do you ever think about getting a tattoo?" And she said, "Yes, I have." And then I knew it, right? That it's going to happen right then and there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about Shannon Decker. She's the executive director of the Speedy Foundation. Shannon, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
You look lovely, by the way, even though this is a podcast. You got all dressed up, knowing that we do videos, so thank you for doing that.
You bet. It's good to be
Shannon,
here.
how did we meet? Just tell the audience real quick. We'll jump in and tell Jessica, how did we meet?
I honestly don't remember. I know that we met online.
Oh.
Did we get connected? Did we get connected through? I don't know, Dennis.
Was it through suicide work?
An email? It was through suicide work.
Okay.
Suicide work. I heard about her. I saw her doing something with the ski team, and then I reached out, and then Linked by Legacy started.
Yes. Okay. So I think you reached out, and I said, "There's this group that we have going. You have to find out more about it. Come to one of our next meetings." And then you joined the Linked by Legacy group.
Exactly.
This little coalition of nonprofits that are focused on suicide prevention that have all been established in memory of someone who's been lost to suicide.
And Jessica, that's a really cool organization because they get what we all go through. It's people that are honoring a loved one, and they started like a nonprofit or a 501c3, and they're doing stuff in their communities, and we are truly linked by legacy, and the legacy is the loss of our loved ones. So, in fact, next time we have a meeting, Jessica, you got to jump on with us and see what they're all about.
I'd love to.
I was just going to say that there are people, and a loose network patchwork of people, compassionate people who have a story, a connection to a loss by suicide. And Jessica, you could tell the audience, just refresh their memories. What is your connection to this cause?
Well, my connection is the loss of my dad when I was 18 in 1992, and almost losing my brother in 2005.
All right. And the listeners know my story, the loss of my brother Mark and Matthew, 11 years apart. Now, Shannon, coming right to you, you're the guest. Yeah. What is your connection to the cause?
I have a lot of connections to the cause, but the nonprofit that I run is in memory of my cousin. The Speedy Foundation is in memory of Jeret Speedy Peterson. He was on the U.S. ski team for about 16 years in the discipline of aerial skiing. So he was a 3-time Olympian. He came home with a silver medal from the Vancouver Olympics, and unfortunately died by suicide about a year and a half later. So that's one of my reasons for the work that I do. But previous to him, I lost 2 very close friends in high school and a childhood friend. And the list kind of goes on. And every single time I go, what was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to say? And by the time we lost Speedy, we knew that there was more to understand and more that we could do for our community. So that's my life.
From the highest highs, the silver medal, to the lowest lows a year and a half later. It's amazing how quickly, when you step off the podium, how quickly things can go south.
Yeah. Well, he spent a lot of his career talking about struggles with mental health, struggles with substance use openly. He talked a lot about some adverse childhood experiences that he experienced. He did a lot of segments with the Today Show during the Winter Olympics year after year, and just kind of established a rapport there. And so it was unique. He died in 2011. And so at that point, athletes weren't really talking about mental health. They certainly weren't disclosing the struggles that they had with mental health. And he was working really hard with the ski team and other agencies to be able to take the medications that were prescribed to him, the psychiatric medications. He couldn't take them during competitive seasons. And at times he needed breaks. So he would take a sabbatical, usually the year following an Olympic year, just to handle mental health and pressure. And at that point, that was really pretty new. And there was a lot of work. He would get a spot back on the team, but he would start at the bottom and have to work his way back up. So when he died, we decided as a family and as a friend group, as we started the nonprofit, that since he had already started talking openly about the struggles that he had, that he would be okay with us continuing to share his story.
I appreciate you sharing that because I know the Speedy Foundation, but I don't know much about Speedy. You and I are linked by this, but I don't know much about your cousin. So thank you for sharing that. Here he was an advocate. He was out there doing it, speaking about it. And 14 years ago, which look how far we come. Now, if you went to the ski team and said, I need a year off, they'd be like, dude, do what you got to do. Right?
Here's the policy and here's how it works. And
here's our leave, our mental health leave.
And here's all the support you get through the insurance and all the stuff that was missing previously.
Gosh, when my brothers died, it was 83 and 94, going even further back in the time machine. We didn't even talk about it at all. I think my brother Mark, his obituary was like to a charity not even closely related to suicide. It was like, we're not even going to go there. It was like an orphanage. Like, he wasn't an orphan, he had a family. Like, what are we doing?
I saw something today on Facebook that somebody had passed away, and they didn't say how. They had their picture. They said it was a loss, and then one of their pictures was the 988 sign.
There you go.
I'm okay with that. You don't have to say it. We know now, but it was just left there, steps. Right?
So Shannon, we lose Speedy. I'm sorry for your loss. It's a club that, you were touched way before that, and then Speedy's it's hard to find somebody, by the way, who hasn't been impacted. It's just hard to find a person on the street who doesn't have a story. So how soon after then, when Speedy dies, does the Speedy Foundation born?
Well, that is a good question because our anniversary is coming up. Let's see. We lost Speedy on July 25th, and we founded the Speedy Foundation on July 29th.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you had a I guess like a community around you helping you, Shannon, do that?
Yeah. Well, two of Speedy's best buddies, he had this circle of guy friends from high school that he just considered his best pals in the world. Two of them had just graduated from law school. And so as I was planning his memorial service at his mom's house and handling all the logistics, they came and sat down with his mom and myself, and Tyler and Skiff were his two buddies, and they said, we need to do something in his memory, in his legacy. We don't know what it should be, but it needs to be direct. It needs to be related to suicide. We know how to start a nonprofit. It's really pretty simple and straightforward. Let's do that so that at his memorial service, we can collect the money and we can do something in his memory. And so, in launching this nonprofit, it was pretty vague. We knew that we wanted to do something, but what, we didn't know. And at his memorial service, we had it in this big ballroom at Boise State University. And the mayor of Boise, his name was Dave Beater, he came up to the family afterwards and he said, I don't know if you know this, but Idaho and Wyoming are the two remaining states that don't have hotline call centers. Idaho had a call center. It was run out of Boise State, and the legislature struck it as a line item in the budget when the budget got tight. And so he said, there are groups of people that are really interested in relaunching a hotline for the state of Idaho. Idaho State University has the plans. The VA is involved. There's a lot of energy around this. What if you were to get involved in that? And so that was the first action that we took. We became the funding mechanism to relaunch Idaho's suicide prevention hotline. And it took about a year, and we were able to get the Idaho hotline launched in 2012 through another umbrella agency. But it was really nice. We were able to do that in his just collecting money. Other people had been touched by suicide, and to feel like we were doing something meaningful. And it was also nice because Speedy lived in Park City, Utah, and we grew up in Boise, Idaho. So these became the two areas that we really wanted to focus on. They were the ones that knew him by name. And so we used the Park City Foundation as our funding mechanism. Donations went there. And once things were ready, we were able to just write a check and transition all the funding to the other umbrella agency in Idaho that would, and still does, manage Idaho's suicide prevention hotline. And then Wyoming was able to get their hotline going in 2020.
Holy mackerel. So timeline me, 2011, we lose Speedy, and in 2012, you are able to take that momentum to quickly turn that tragedy into something that impacts people in Idaho.
Yeah.
Next year, you get the suicide prevention lifeline back in the state. That's crazy good. What a quick win.
It was awesome it was really awesome, just to use his story to help champion that cause. It was something that, on the TV, on radio, it wasn't something that people wanted to say. I remember the 2018 Olympics, the NBC affiliate in Boise said, "Come on in, we want to talk about Winter Games. Let's put some programming together." And I said, "Great, we can talk about Speedy's story, we can talk about integrating suicide prevention into, the workplace, into schools, into the community." And they were like, "Whoa, pump the brakes. We're not going to say the word suicide on TV." And I said, "Oh, we're going to talk about Speedy, who's dead, a dead Olympian during the Olympics, but we're not going to say how he died, even though we've used his story on this network time and time again to talk about this." And they weren't ready. So you take what you can get, and you talk about mental health, or you talk about, resilience. And I will say, 2 years later, by the year 2020, we were able to talk about suicide openly on that network. And I haven't come across that since then. But I think just as a frame of reference, as we're talking about a timeline, there's been a lot of progress in the state of Idaho since Speedy died 14 years ago.
That's the stigma that comes with it right off the bat. We've come a long way, baby, as they used to say. So 2018, 2011, 2012 to get the lifeline. I'm staying on this timeline. You get the Idaho lifeline, and it's important that you have a local hotline, because you got to match resources, people. It's important that it's there.
What we found out, the power that would have been had Speedy been in a suicidal crisis and known about the hotline, had it readily available in his cell phone, felt comfortable enough to call and to talk through that crisis. That would have been incredible. That wasn't the case. Most of us knew that there was some type of hotline. None of us knew what the phone number was. And so normalizing the fact that there's help and hope available became a huge part of the work that we wanted to do as volunteers who never studied anything about nonprofits. Speedy's mom was still a registered nurse. I was getting my master's in school administration. Tyler and Skiff had just graduated from law school and were starting their legal careers. We weren't out to change the world, but just to use Speedy's story to start to destigmatize things. And what we learned in Idaho was that if you did call with a 208 area code, those calls rolled over either to Portland, Oregon, or to the Nebraska call center. I think it was Omaha. And neither of those places are going to know about the resources that are available in this rugged, rural, bootstrap mentality, firearm, pro-gun state. And so it was really important that we had a local call center, a physical place. It started out as just a couple hours a day. And eventually we were able to expand it to 24/7 and add in texting and chatting. And of course, now it's the state infrastructure for handling crisis triage, and is certified for all 988. So we're really proud of it. It's something that the entire state and so many different entities and organizations have gotten behind, and it's a very well run call center.
Well, that's fantastic, because I used to work in the call center where I lived in Chicago. I worked on the hotline. It was some of the most rewarding work I've ever done, answering the phones Thursday nights from 8 to 12, which is funny because I couldn't stay up past 10. But you said the word certified. They get audited. They have to pass an audit. You have to get all this stuff. I want to ask you about Idaho if you know about it, but we just passed a milestone here in South Carolina. I know because I was on a state coalition. We're answering 90% of the calls in South Carolina. Like it was 88% at the state coalition meeting. Jessica, I saw you online. I didn't go, but I saw you
I'll
online.
be at the 988 coalition meeting tomorrow, so I'm going to bring this up and talk.
Yeah, and then I heard from Jessica, we have an Office of Suicide Prevention here, Shannon, and they just announced that it crossed over 90%, which is really nice.
Amazing. That's
Does Idaho
great.
have an Office of Suicide Prevention, or does it fall under the behavioral health umbrella?
Yeah. So let's see. I need to think about my timeline here. Hopefully there's some good editing. In 20
we got a great editor.
We're just real on here, right? No
Okay.
script.
Okay. 2016, I was living in California and I moved back to Idaho because it felt like the momentum was there to get some more work done. We had hired a lobbyist and asked him to go to the legislature and request the state to start funding the hotline. Until 2016, it was all privately funded through grants and other entities. And so our lobbyist said, this is going to be a 5-year plan. We have a very conservative legislature. Let's just start priming the pump, getting them ready. And it happened to just be perfect timing. And there were so many champions, just very fiscally and socially conservative people in leadership, but they'd been touched by suicide in some capacity and they were ready. And so Idaho in 2016, in our farm legislature, we just have a couple months, they were able to fund the hotline at 60% of its budget. And they established a suicide prevention program in the Department of Health and Welfare. And so that's how that got started. 2016, there is an Office of Suicide Prevention now in Idaho.
There you go. Now flip hats a little bit. You're still doing a lot of work in Utah, correct?
Yeah. The work that we did in Utah, though, was less with the legislature. Utah, for being a conservative, rural, very religious state, they have a lot of incredible work happening. In fact, earlier today, I was on the monthly Utah Suicide Prevention Coalition call. They have incredible work that is taking place. The State Department of Education has robust suicide prevention resources. They've had incredible funding dedicated to suicide prevention as far as like a rural Western state goes. They have incredible champions. Kim Myers led the state of Utah in the Office of Suicide Prevention for years and years. Now she works at Intermountain doing the same thing for our healthcare system. And one of my favorite people in Utah is Representative Steve Eliason, who is just this incredible champion for an incredible Republican champion for all kinds of social services, but specifically suicide prevention. He has been working at this nonstop for years and years, and he will develop legislation, he'll take it forth, and either it passes or he needs to take it back and revise it. And his legislation just builds and builds and builds on it. And he's created templates and timelines for other states if they're interested in doing similar work. He's always happy to share the lessons learned and how he's been able to build relationships to achieve some of these
I've seen that guy speak twice. One, a room full of like 600 people at a national meeting, and then two was at Linked by Legacy, where there's maybe 7 of them. And he gave the great passionate speech at both of them. Doesn't matter how big the crowd is, he cares about this topic. And it was cool to be in the room with him.
It should be bipartisan.
I don't want to get political, but didn't we?
No, it shouldn't matter. But I'm glad that you said that.
Yeah. It was one of our champions got defeated in the election.
Yeah.
Representative Seel, and it was awful because she was doing all the good stuff. And then she got defeated, so you got to start over. But he's been there for a while now, and he's been pretty darn consistent in his messaging, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it should be bipartisan. It shouldn't be political, and yet it is. And you have to know, like, in your area, in your region, how to navigate that. In 2018, we went to the state legislature nope, 2017, we went to the nope, 2018. 2018, we went to the legislature to pass the Jason Flatt Act and to put in to policy just suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention policies for the Department of Education. Idaho didn't have anything on the books. And I approached my 6th grade teacher, Senator Jamie Ward Engelking, who was also a good friend of Speedy's. And I said, here's what I want to do. Here are all the other states. Here's how Steve Eliason did this in Utah. Here's how they've done it in Tennessee. Here's every state that has this in place. Let's do it in Idaho. And she said, great, I'm happy to do this, but I'm not the right person. We have to find the right Republican to lead this. And we did. He just recently passed away. It was Senator Carl Crabtree, who was an incredible advocate for suicide prevention in Idaho.
That is wild. I saw one time, I saw 2 guys speak. It was Karl Rove, who was a Bush guy, and it was David Axelrod, who's a Clinton guy. And they're on stage together. You know what they had in common? They both lost a parent to suicide. Politics goes out the window.
Yep.
And if there's one unifying topic, it's mental health that seems to bring us all together. Wow. So
I'm impressed, Shannon. It's getting legislators to to your point. It should be bipartisan. It's important. It's mental health. I mean, come on. We all have some experience with it personally, or family, or friends, or coworkers, or whatever. But I sometimes it's hard when they have every other thing coming at them, and all the push and pull of pressure, and let's be honest, there are still folks, and we talk about this, dentists, that see suicide is as a failure or the easy way out. I've heard that recently. Someone was talking about it. Well, they just took the easy way out. And yeah, we won't even get started on that. But it's hard to please everyone. So the fact that you had so many different folks backing this, it may not sound like a big deal to many, but I work in rural health and see a lot of different things from the 100,000-foot view in the state, and that's impressive.
Well, thank you. I was very proud of it, and really the legislative pieces that I did were really just to try to progress the idea that training mental health literacy really needed to saturate the entire state in different populations and different roles and responsibilities, and so that was always my goal. And things have gone backwards quite a bit in the state of Idaho. They've now enacted all kinds of legislation where, like, youth that call the hotline, there can't be any follow-up that's done. The hotline does a lot of really good work with caring contacts. That's off the table for minors if there isn't parent permission. And currently, if they're not in crisis, it's not something that they can call and talk if there's no parent permission. The state of Idaho has passed a lot of parent controls, parent rights in schools. They have to opt in order to see the nurse or to see a school counselor, unless it's a life-threatening emergency. So I was really proud of the things that were happening, and now there's a lot of work to do from other advocates and from other citizens in that state. I have since moved to California, where the laws are very different, and I feel a lot more comfortable, and the community is just much more progressive as far as the suicide prevention work that can be done.
Well, with your geographical overlap, you get to see different systems in place, and we can't afford to go backwards, because I spoke to a coroner in a local county here, and we're at the halfway point of the year. We're halfway through the year, and they already hit their number for suicides that they had last year. Halftime.
Yeah, July.
And I'm going to speak in Bowling Green, Ohio. Out of all of our jurisdictions, they're the same way. It's a little, this county is already at their number they had for last year. So something's going on. And it's no time to go backwards. Now, you mentioned another word in your explanation there, Shannon, training. You do a lot of trainings at the Speedy Foundation and programming. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. In 2014, I took my aunt, Speedy's mom, to a mental health first aid training. It was this 12-hour, 2-day situation. And we kind of walked away from there saying, great, let's start supporting that as well. And we partnered with Optum Salt Lake and Optum Idaho to provide mental health first aid. But in 2016, I went and became certified in youth mental health first aid and left public school, public administration, and really wanted to focus on providing youth mental health first aid, as well as QPR was another training that we really focused on. And over the years, I've just added so many different trainings into our training kit. Most recently, got certified in one called Vital Cog. It used to be called Working Minds. It's at University of Colorado. And they've got one for the workplace. They have one for student athletes, for athletic departments, for construction industry. And it's this training that it feels like a souped up version of QPR. It incorporates Dr. Thomas Joyner's interpersonal theory. It has a post-vention module that can be added on. It has these really great cartoon videos. And yeah, education is my jam. I'm always jazzed about it. And when it comes down to it, for me, my why is, I lost my cousin to suicide, but at 18, I lost one of my best friends.
Mm.
And she was giving me every invitation in the world to ask her directly, are you having thoughts of suicide? And instead, we talked in circles and circles and circles about it. And I knew enough. I had this visceral reaction. I knew that she was talking about killing herself. And so when she fell asleep, she took a nap. She'd been in a very serious car accident. Her boyfriend had been killed in the car accident, and she was on life support for a while. And I went away to college. And when I came home to visit her, she was still recovering. And so I went upstairs when she fell asleep to take a nap. And I talked to her dad, and her dad was an emergency room doctor. And so I thought he would understand what I was trying to say. But I kept hinting, I think she's depressed. Is she going to therapy? Are you sure that she's going to therapy? She lies. She's lied to you. We lied about partying. We lied about this. We've lied to you a lot. Are you sure that she's telling you the truth? Are you sure that she's taking her antidepressant medication? Are you sure that she's, and again, I just talked in circles, and I hoped that he understood what I was saying, but I didn't say it directly. I didn't say, I think she's thinking about killing herself. And so for me, my why is really just that everyone needs to know that it's okay to talk directly about suicide, that there are going to be these warning signs. There's going to be these invitations. If you went to a Living Works training, they'd be called invitations. If you go to QPR, they're going to be called warning signs. I think of them when I'm in trainings as a smoke detector, and people are letting off this signal, and your body is the smoke detector for so many of these people who die by suicide. They've shared something, and oftentimes we just don't know. We don't pick it up, or we don't know what to say. We, as a society, just haven't been given permission to talk about this directly. And so, yeah, that's one of the main focuses of the work that we do. We were able to get the U.S. ski team trained in 2019. We had everyone trained in QPR. And in 2020 through 2022, we worked with the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee to stand up a mental health task force. And they've adopted mental health first aid, and they've been training the national governing bodies in mental health first aid. So that's my passion. I would love to be able to walk away from this work once we know that mental health literacy rates are just as saturated as CPR rates, right?
Exactly. There, and wow, all these would have, could have, should have that's your driving force. I think about my brother Matt. There were warning signs because we lost Mark, and we should have had our A game on. One thing I noticed about training, I want to ask you about this. All those trainings, QPR, question, persuade, refer, mental health first aid, been through them all. Living Works has a whole slate. This week I'm going to go to a Safe Talk training. I'm going to be the community resource and sit in the back in case anybody needs help. I told the girl, I'll be there, and love that stuff. One thing we're having trouble with, I don't know what's going on out west, is getting people in the seats. I don't know what happened after COVID, Jessica, you do some stuff with rural health. You could pipe in here. I've heard from people saying they sign up and this week we're doing this training.
Is it in person, Dennis?
It's in person.
People don't want to come in person anymore. They want to sit like we are. It's more comfortable, especially in uncomfortable discussions.
This has to be an in-person discussion. Though,
I agree.
It's so I've done QPR online. I've done it for people across the country. I like to be in the room. I facilitate a loss meeting. Is it available? Can I phone in? No, you have to come in and sit there and let me see you as your leg is shaking and you're hurting. I need to see it. How's it going out west, Shannon?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. We used to be able to put up community trainings and people would sign up and they would show up. Before COVID, it was always in person. Those were the protocols, and COVID relaxed those protocols. So now there can be virtual, there can be hybrid. And I, as a trainer, prefer in person always. But we'll put the opportunities out there. We'll, put them out there for free and absorb all the costs. And we don't get people. We'll get 12 people to sign up and we'll get 3 people to show up. And so that doesn't fit with fidelity. And I think that people have become accustomed to like webinars where you sign on if you have time, and you listen if you have time. And that's not what a suicide prevention or a mental health training is.
You got to be all in on those things. Yeah, you don't sit there and check your email when we're role playing. You got to say the S word, suicide. I'll never forget the first time I took assist training as a participant, and I had to sit across from a mom who lost her son. I'll never forget it. Now I lost 2 brothers, and she looked at me. She goes, "We're going to do this?" I'm like, "We have to." And it was live, and I mean, I locked in on her eyes. I'm about ready to cry. And I had to say, "Are you thinking of suicide?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh! If I could have just said that to my little brother, I wouldn't be in this seat right now."
Yeah. Yeah. I was teaching mental health first aid pre-COVID in Boise, and I kept having one of my good friends, who had died by suicide, from my high school classmates. His mom kept signing up for trainings, and I would get excited that she was going to be there, and she couldn't do it. And it happened probably 4 times. And on the 5th time, at least in my head, it was the 5th time, she walked in. She walked in probably 10, 15 minutes late, sat in the back. And during the first break, I was able to go over and give her a hug. And she said, I've signed up several times. She goes, and I get here, but then I just sit in my car. So...
Totally
hard.
Get that. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to darken the doorway for such a tough subject. Look at our podcast name. It's a tough subject.
Yeah.
Jessica's laughing like that. And look at the top. It says it's a tough subject. I did a live show in Greenville, and Jessica was there. I decided to charge people because I didn't want to do that Facebook, come and say everyone got, I got 1,000 people coming and 3 people are in the seats. I decided to charge them. And it was weird, but they have to have skin in the game. It was $15. It was nominal for an hour. And then we actually fed them afterwards. So they got a free cannoli out of the deal. But it was, I need you to prove that you're going to show up.
And there's just people, there's value in, if paying for something, even if it's a minimal amount, it's anytime, anything that you do, I always hear, charge something so that people find it valuable. Even though we know it's valuable. But I have to say, I'm working with a mom that lost her daughter. I say working with, and Dennis knows this. We talk about, I'm sure it happens to you, Shannon. People know you do this work. They reach out to you. Can you talk to my friend? I used to feel vastly unprepared. I do not anymore because, I'm not providing therapy. I'm just there. And in the South, our culture is interesting. Sometimes I grew up here. And I knew this woman, her daughter was my friend in 1st grade, and have not seen her daughter since 1st grade or been to her house since 1st grade. And I don't know how she knew to reach out to me, but she had also attempted, and she was so just horrified by even saying that she had done that. Like I'm a terrible person. And that is, I feel like when you were saying the mom didn't want to come, sometimes I'm the terrible person. Sometimes it's like us. I'm a terrible person because I didn't say anything. I let my child suffer. I let this happen. And it just breaks my heart. You're right. The trainings are important. And also the postvention. Dennis knows how I feel about this. I don't feel like we do enough around that.
Yeah.
And people are suffering from that.
Yeah, some of the best suicide prevention is postvention.
Right.
Let's talk about some postvention. Okay.
Love it. Let's do it.
University of Utah has this incredible.
I was going to ask if I could call in and join virtually at one of your trainings.
Well, so as far as trainings go,
yeah,
I'm not doing any more just free public trainings. And the last couple ones that I've had for like that nominal $10, $15 fee, people are just not signing up for. So I've just kind of put those on hold. And I'm contracted in California to provide them for free. And I go into businesses and there's not a huge demand for them. I know that the demand for the trainings typically picks up after there has been a suicide loss.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at. If you go to our calendar, you're not going to see a whole bunch of, free trainings like we had 5 years ago.
Sure.
That's just been the evolution of what we do. But I'm happy to, collaborate with a group. I'm happy to come in if there's a group of people that can come together and I can be there. I've got the skills, I've got the tools, or I can connect you with someone else that could be that person.
Now, the postvention piece, where you're going with this, we don't have any lost teams in South Carolina. What are you doing in your geographical purvey? What are you doing for postvention?
Well, the loss model is an incredible model, but it hasn't been adopted widely in the West. Frank Campbell, who developed it. I met him at a conference in Nevada. He was presenting to the Nevada Suicide Prevention Coalition. And it's an incredible model, but Nevada wasn't able to get that adopted and scaled. That's not happening in Utah. It's not happening in Northern California. It's not happening in Idaho. There is a community, the Sun Valley, Blaine County community has a loss team, but it's not the loss model. So I've seen some communities, it's usually smaller scale, that kind of pulls their pieces together. So with the contracts that I have for the Lake Tahoe area, we have built postvention resources. We had a contagion of suicide here in 2012, 2013. And the state gave money to the local community to put together a postvention toolkit. And so it's one that's been replicated and shared out. But over the years, I've worked with different communities that have had clusters of suicide and have gone in either just as that crisis support to be there and to receive people. We've done postvention trainings, and most recently, the city of Boise has experienced a suicide cluster of youth and young adults. And it's the most public that I've ever seen of the communities that I work in response to coming together. And so the school district has adopted Hope Squad programming throughout all the middle and the high schools. We were able to pull together some professional development and did a book study with Dr. Jonathan Singer and Dr. Julie Cyril. We were doing some film screenings with the impactful film trilogy of Like, The Upstanders, and Angst. A lot of community conversations. There's been several parent groups that have started their own nonprofits. This fall, we're going to be bringing a professional skier by the name of Drew Peterson to the Boise area for one big community film screening. And then the high schools are going to host their own assemblies and using, really good messaging. Drew is really conscientious of talking about suicide in a safe way in a large public setting for youth. So it's a lot. The postvention piece is a lot, and there isn't some packaged thing that can just be applied, like Living Works prevention trainings.
Mhm.
NAMI has some great stuff. Lost teams are great.
Yeah.
But communities, from my perspective, aren't willing to go there until after a
Yeah.
tragedy. And then they'll say, we don't have any funding. And they don't have the capacity to put the pieces in place. So they're kind of hobbling together programming. And I will say that, I went into the mayor's office at the city of Boise, and I had a list of things that I wanted to have done. That they were my recommendations on how this community and all the partners that came to the table needed to move forward. And one of those was that they needed to have a post-vention plan in place. And it needed to not just be for suicide, it needed to be for the moment that they get a cluster of overdoses. The
Yes.
opioid crisis is
Yes.
so connected. I mean, it just mirrors the suicide prevention or the
It's
suicide
literally a
loss
hair
piece.
away from the
Mhm.
same thing, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And other crises. There have been other really high profile deaths that have impacted that community, and there just becomes this scramble, and it's not kind of that long term thoughtful piece of supporting and building resilience. And so the city has built that plan. It has not been launched, and it's kind of behind the schedule of the timeline. But now it's time to go back and put pressure and make sure that local leadership follows through on these commitments.
Oh,
So
yeah. They need.
we could do another hour and a half just on post-vention. I'd love to dig into that.
listen, I'm sitting
That's
here
Jessica's
thinking,
button. That's
yeah,
her button right there.
I mean,
Yeah.
to your point, and Dennis and I recently, I knew someone that died on the work site from suicide. Both of us tried to get in. They, like normal, corporate came in. Here's your one grief counseling session. We're going to come in and talk to you now, business as usual on Monday. And, I'm sitting here thinking, my dad died in October of 1992. My brother attempted to take his own life in 2005. My mother lost her job 4 months later. My sister dropped out of high school. 2 years later, it was teen pregnancy. Like all of these didn't happen a week or two after the death. These are
No.
ongoing things that I like to call the community into action. Like you might think it's not your business, but everybody has a place long term. It can't just be 2 weeks later. These things happen over many years sometimes if they're not
Yes.
addressed. And so, yes, he's right. I'm very passionate about it because it ruined a portion of my family's life. And there were people that dropped the ball that shouldn't have. So yeah.
Yeah. It derailed my career. It set me
Right.
back in personal relationships and just, what we were all kind of doing socially. And so looking at that impact model that Dr. Seel has put together on people that are going to be deeply impacted and the amount of people that are impacted by each suicide loss.
It's ripple.
That rippling effect. Yeah.
Crazy.
And so I have a TED Talk. Dennis has a TED Talk. I have a TED Talk. And
I don't have a
was
TED Talk.
asked,
I don't want one.
Put that
I
on
don't
your
think.
to-do list. You can do it. I was asked to come in and do a TED Talk in Park City because Speedy's coach had died by suicide. And he had, retired from the U.S. ski team. His name was Matt. He was this incredibly sarcastic, jovial, amazing man. He was working at Red Bull and living in Hawaii and just, he was married and all of a sudden, this rippling effect goes through and Speedy's teammates and folks within the industry are calling saying, I heard that Matt's died. I heard that, Matt died by suicide. And Matt's family never announced that it was suicide. And his obituary never said that it was suicide. And so Park City folks had said, somebody needs to say this publicly. Like you need to connect these dots because everybody who was impacted by Speedy's death is also impacted by Matt's death.
Mm-hmm.
And Speedy's story isn't just his story. There's all of these other friends and connections that were young, up and coming elite athletes who are trying to make these massive goals. And there's this map, there's this timeline of all of these people who either died by suicide or have attempted suicide. And there are so many contributing factors to these deaths. But so I go to give my TED talk, which is about postvention. And the way that it's edited, I don't talk about postvention once. You don't see the map. You don't see me talking about Matt. And I can understand that because his death wasn't public knowledge.
Right.
I've been able to confirm that it was a suicide death. But if his family's not willing to talk about it, then it just builds more shame and more stigma.
100%.
And these teammates that one of his younger teammates reached out to me and he said, I now know what it feels like. Like I could understand why Speedy would want to die and I forgave him. But he said, now I know what it feels like to want that like as the outcome. And that's contagion. That's the whole purpose of postvention, to have that organization come forward and say, we have had another suicide loss and we're going to come together and support each other.
Because not saying it is shame, right?
Yeah.
And this,
yeah.
And postvention is prevention.
Postvention is prevention.
It's so hard though. You want to respect the family and their privacy, but you're also like, you're hurting your person you lost and others by doing that. It's such a hard tightrope, Yeah.
It is. And if it costs someone else a life, I mean, it's just you. So I've got this little timeline that I've incorporated because we use Speedy's story in these trainings. And that's why I'm not great with Living Works trainings. I can't stick to a script. I have to be able to embellish. I'll say I'm taking off my mental health first aid hat and I'm going to bring in a story. I'm going to bring in a local resource.
We always do a script, don't we, Dennis?
Yeah. We were very well scripted.
We're scripted.
Here. Yeah.
Oh, Shannon, you storytelling that's, I think, the most effective means for what we're trying to do is you tell a story. And people will not remember what you told them, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
It's a science. I mean, in grad school, we had a whole class on storytelling and public health. I mean, it is a powerful, powerful means of getting a group to move towards an outcome.
Yeah.
Well, Shannon, I'll give you a funny plug about this. The topic that we did a community talk here, and I basically was it. I rented the theater. I said, I'm doing this. You can't get buy-in. I said, screw it. I'm going to try this. I want to see if it works. And I hired a DJ. This is the most bizarre mental health talk ever, but it was the way I wanted to do it. I have ADHD. I lost 2 brothers. I can't even hold a thought for like a minute. So I hired a DJ, and Jessica was one of the participants. I called out a number 1 through 10. I had 10 slides. I told my story, but in the middle of it, I would call a number. I say, who's number 7? And then Jessica would stand up and say, that's my number. I said, what do you do? She goes, I work for Office of Rural Health, and we institute a behavioral health model. And the place clapped, and then I'd ask a question. And everybody had a script in problem. Like, formerly suicidal people read it. What changed for you? And they would read it. And then we talk about it. It was really cool because what the best response I got afterwards was my brother-in-law came out to me. He goes, I didn't realize we had so many resources.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, bingo, that's what we wanted. I wanted all these people to stand up, all these nonprofits to stand up and say, what do you do? What do you do? We had Mental Health America. They run the hotline here. She said that, the place started clapping. Thank you. Now I wish people, back to the postvention, coming back to prevention, if they realized how many people are out there. So we'll never know. I'm going to wrap this up here and we're in a nice little bow. You'll never know how many people you impacted by telling Speedy's story and doing what you do, because there's the person sitting in the back row that doesn't want to be there. And then one day they remembered something you said, and they say, you know what? Not today. I'm going to live tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. I'm not alone.
And I'm sure you have feedback that people have come up to you and said years later, said, I didn't want to go to your training. My mom dragged me. I'm glad I did.
Yeah. I was doing mental health first aid at local community college, and some folks from the hospital were signed up to do it. And one lady stayed after. This was probably 6 months ago. And she said, I had taken, it was a youth mental health first aid. She said, I had taken mental health first aid before, and I was asked to come to this training. And I said, no, thank you. I've already done that training. And they said, you haven't done it with Shannon, and we were paying you, just go do it. And she said, I'm so glad that I did. She's like, the first one was just the most bland, non-passionate thing. And she's like, you've woven in your stories as an educator, your stories as a person with lived experience with your family. And she's like, this was an amazing training. And so,
Whoa.
so I know that sharing his story and weaving in other stories as tangible and allowing for others to share their stories that fit in is powerful. And that's how we change minds. This whole anti-stigma campaign isn't going to work. Instead, we can talk about real stories, and we can have humor, and we can have tears. And that's how we're going to recognize that we can talk about these things directly. We don't need to talk around them in circles. This can become a nonpartisan piece until the day where everyone knows what resources are available and there's no shame or stigma in seeking those out.
All right, Shannon Decker, let's right there on that high note of hope.
Yes.
Well,
How do people get a hold of you?
People can get a hold of me by going to the speedyfoundation.org.
I'm following you right now. Let me go right. I'll be that first person.
Yeah.
She's creeping on you right now.
Yep.
You can subscribe to our newsletters. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube.
It is the Speedy Foundation. There's a the, right? The speedyfoundation.org. I'm on the website right now.
Yeah.
And there you are. Check it out,
well, I
folks.
I just wanted to circle back to our tattoos because you flew out to Reno to do a talk in Fallon, and I drove down to have lunch with you. We had some tacos, and I said, what are you doing after lunch? And you said, there's a tattoo place across the street. I'm going to go get a tattoo. And I said, I will join you. And so I have my tattoo on my forearm, and mine has a little semicolon in it. But my tattoo that had been in my head for years is an E. E. Cummings poem that says, I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. And so that is my connection to suicide prevention. And that is my connection to you, Dennis, and now to you, Jessica. Thank you so much for talking the talk and doing this podcast. Thanks for having me as a guest.
Well, it's a tough subject, but when we speak to people like you, it's not a tough subject. We have to keep going on. So I get energized through our connection through Linked by Legacy and watching you do what you do, Idaho, Utah, and all points, Colorado, California, Truckee area, Tahoe. I'm inspired by you because you're a force.
Me too.
And I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. And it is a tough subject. It's a tough subject, but we keep talking about it. It'll be less tough. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Shannon Decker, the speedyfoundation.org. Jessica, any parting thoughts for our guest here?
Nope. Hope is real. Prevention, postvention is real, and follow the speedyfoundation.org.
There you go. Shannon, thank you for coming on. That's it.
Thank
Peace.
you.
And Tim will cut it up and make it look good, but you did awesome. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.